Okay, we're live. Enough of this. I'm going to drink a beer. We're live in the studio. This is Team Early as Fuck podcast. This is the Garden Guru episode, so I'm pumped. I was just telling Jason and Miranda here, our Garden Gurus. Fuck me, I apologize. This is a really good beer. But it's spring, the Garden Gurus episode. So this is the third one. This is year 3. First year, it was Jason and Tony, White Feather. That was just a great all over the place episode. Yeah. And then last year I had a great on-screen picture of a home garden, which was just absolutely terrible, but I loved it. And we went over home gardening. And then this year, I'm really excited to talk about perennial food systems, herbs, all the nutrients, and how we can create ongoing sustainable food systems right in our own backyards. That's what it's about. So with that, you two are just like, bam, teamwork. I like it. I'm going to have to adjust the camera. And with that, you can start talking so I can go adjust the camera. Jason, hello.
Hey, hello out there, internet land.
Quick recap since we've last had you on. What's going on?
Well, as we were just discussing, we've got warm weather ahead of us here, and we're a few weeks into planning already for Garden Gurus. My name's Jason Wendt. I started this business a number of years ago. I think it was around 2008 where I started a business that evolved into this business that I suggest was really taking shape in 2012, and has evolved into an organization where we aid people and businesses in maximizing what they can grow as far as food on their property with the least amount of inputs, and then provide the community connections and information, and then also, of course, the services to help them to maximize potential there. And Miranda came on board with us must have been 3 years ago, and then again last year, and she's on board for her third year, not consecutively. And so this is Miranda.
What's up, Miranda?
Hey, Will. I'm Miranda. This is, as Jason mentioned, my third year with Garden Guru, and I am the head gardener, and with a focus on medicinal herbs and perennials.
Nice. I like it. Miranda, where are you from? We gotta dive into your backstory, because Jason and I we've bored everyone to tears with our backstories and what we care about. Let's hear about you.
So I think the easiest way I could explain that without doing an entire another episode is Stevens Point is the first place I found home.
Okay.
I moved around a lot and moved here in 2010, found a community, moved out west, did that whole thing for a while, then went up north and was looking to put down some roots, and, well, here I am.
Here you are. Do you have a website yet?
No.
Just still Facebook? Oh, my God, you're driving me crazy.
I have a cell phone.
I know you do. I'm proud of you, buddy. And you have 2 children now. Let's not forget that. Let's throw that out there.
Yeah.
But no, Miranda, we're not done. We're not done with you. I'm coming back to you.
I think we should make it be known that Miranda has put a significant amount of time in the field growing things, and in what would be considered a laboratory, I guess, right? Creating things.
Laboratory, I like it.
What would you call it, Miranda? What would you call the setting that you actually use to develop some of the...
I mean, it does sometimes feel like alchemy, but...
There you go. Oh, Jason fixed it. He's fixing it.
Yeah,
good.
it.
We can buff that out later. We good? Yes.
I think so.
Miranda's just too strong. All that farm strength. So, Miranda, what I love to ask people in hunting, there's like the hunting origin story, and in food, farming, what the two of you are doing, which is, I don't want to call it farming because it's not farming. What would you... Goobering? What do we...
Gardening.
Gardening? All right, we'll call it gardening. For you, what are some of your earliest memories around gardening, around soil, around food, around nature? What does that look like for you? That's kind of that draws you to it now.
Yeah, so I originally took to vegetable farming as a means to learn how to feed myself.
Okay.
And wanting to eventually help lower income families gain those skills. So the question of where's food coming from and how are we going to get it on the table is maybe a little bit less pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where my passion and interest for it started. And then I just unsuspectedly fell in love with it. I did livestock for a while, dairy cows, cheese making. But then the more I love learning new things. And so once I learned all of these things and realized I wanted to stay with farming, kind of the annual system didn't really make sense to me. Seemed also like it was sustainable for everyone but the farmer. And I knew that I wanted this lifestyle but didn't necessarily want to sign on to that, including like with land access issues and good labor and all of the things that come with that. But and that year I was managing a large CSA farm and I broke my foot, and I had been introduced to herbs before, but mostly kind of you can eat nettles in the spring and sort of thing, which is still
That's
pretty
like my
out
level.
there for some people.
That's my level of herbs and foraging.
Which is great. But a friend of mine who's also a farmer's mom, I'd met her a couple times before, and she was an herbalist. And she worked with me, and I got the boot from the doctor and otherwise just did herbs.
Take some. Did they? So you were, I'm sure, prescribed the traditional
I didn't take
NSAID.
it.
Oh, good for you. Good.
Yeah, I didn't even take the physical prescription part.
Excellent. There's a time and a place for all that, and it's way
agree.
overprescribed.
Yeah.
There
is a time and place for it, though.
So why? It was just like you broke your foot, the boot, and right away you were like, I'm going this herbal route, or was this what was the space?
Yeah, it was more I don't want these prescription drugs.
Okay.
And then the universe kind of just plopped Nancy into my life.
Okay.
And that's when I really full on subscribed to the power of the plant that the plants have when used properly. And then that following year she had some gardening experience but not much beyond a kitchen garden. Mm-hmm. And she was looking to start growing her own herbs for her business, so that's kind of how it started. So I helped her.
I was gonna say you had some skills in that regard.
Yeah, so she taught me about the plants and I helped her establish them.
I like it.
And I worked with her for 5 years.
Okay.
Five growing seasons.
Gotcha. And what was the salt?
Salt of the Earth Botanicals.
And you're on Instagram, right?
I am in the midst of getting things ready to launch to the public.
Gotcha. So I won't find anything on the Google.
Likely by April, but for sure by May.
Okay. I like it. What was the earliest herbals that you were I'm not even going to go to your Facebook, Jason. It's just bumming me out. What were some of the first herbals that was it all in regards to pain? Was it bone healing, tissue healing? What were some of the...
So connective tissue, bone regrowth, a lot of horsetail for silica and then stuff for nerve damage, and yarrow for helping move fluid from the injury site.
Okay, so lymphatic draining type stuff?
More blood movement, so
Okay.
that pooling doesn't happen in those damaged areas.
Gotcha. So I love all this stuff. Considering I come from orthopedics, like human physiology, the injury process, inflammatory response to food, injuries, life, that kind of thing. What can you explain some of the background, like the herbs and what they're doing when in regards to, let's pick connective tissue. So what are, without giving away, proprietary recipes, what are, I guess, some of the, is there anything common? What is it you're looking for? Or just pick a different example if my example is shit.
I feel like this might be a different subject than Garden Gurus, but...
Oh, no, not at all. I think it's definitely interconnected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interconnective tissues.
There you go. There you go.
Let's see, what's a good one for this area and things that grow here?
I think keep on with the yarrow thing.
Yeah.
I'm real familiar with that one.
What's yarrow? Explain. What? I'm going to look that up while I'm over here. How do I spell it?
YARROW.
Yarrow plant.
So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I know
it grows everywhere.
It's fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
Literally everywhere.
I saw some live the other day that was underneath snow.
Oh, I like that.
I like it. All right.
Yeah, and so a lot of people think of most of the plants that are used in herbalism as weeds, which was another thing that I didn't like about annual farming is, you're kind of going through and saying, like, playing God and all of these plants that you were pulling up have uses. And so yarrow, you would harvest, you can either grow it, it grows everywhere, literally everywhere in the world, which is really rare. And you would harvest the leaves and the flowers, which would be referred to as the aerial parts.
Okay.
And then depending on how you process it, so you could either dry it and use it for tea, or you could oil it, or you could tincture it.
Okay.
And so depending on how you process it and what you pair it with, you could use it for countless things. So, for example, with my foot, I was taking it internally to help keep blood moving around that injury site. And then I was doing a poultice with it. So taking something and soaking, for me, it was just a piece of like cheesecloth and soaking it in the tincture and wrapping it externally, as well as using it topically. And it's really great for sunburns as well, which is kind of a fun
Nice.
little
I like it.
weird.
Can be used as a food.
about it.
Flavoring a beer prior to the use of hops.
Traditionally.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm down.
It's quite a bit bitter. So when you pair it with things like that, it has a really nice flavor.
I'm excited to see what you start releasing through this. This is pretty cool. Coming back to more soil related things, it helps combat soil erosion. Did you know that? It's one of the agriculture uses of it. So would that be considered like a cover crop then?
I think no. The cover crop is typically yep. I think it's one of the benefits of a cover crop.
Okay. I know, like
typically, what's the word I'm looking for? It's maybe indicative of why it grows everywhere with how we've treated our soils throughout history.
For sure. Bam. All right. Cool. Anything else you want to cover on your backstory or what you've got coming up other than an April release?
I don't think so at this time.
Okay. Well, if you do, let me know. We can have you back on and we can talk specifically about all that good stuff because I love it. I'm super interested in learning more about that kind of stuff. Like I was telling you both before the podcast, the book I was gifted with all of the like herbal remedies and kind of like information on common plants. I don't want to say weeds, but just regional plants that grow everywhere. I'm excited to dive into that this spring.
Yeah, well, if you ever want to talk about it, one thing I miss about living up north is having herb nerd friends.
Herb nerd friends. Fair enough. We can start that. We can start like a foragers group of herb nerds.
Fun.
I like that. Herb nerds. Herb nerds. Down. I am down.
It would even look, those two words together would look good.
They would. Herb nerds. Herb nerd club. All right. So with that, okay, let's come back. We're bringing it back. Garden Gurus, LLC, Perennial Food Systems. So I'm Gary Nabhan. Are you familiar with
I don't know Gary.
Are you familiar with the name?
No.
Oh man, I'm gonna send you his stuff. So, Jeremy Solon has got me down, like deep down the perennial food system. So like, for me personally, I try it like it's got to be close to 95% of the protein I eat is sourced local, like hunting wild game.
Trapping.
Trapping. Porcupines, raccoons, beaver. Roadkill. Yeah, it's all good. Like it all gets. That's all like things I've eaten this year. But then that's all fine and good. But obviously that's not accessible to everyone. Nor is that accessible. What attractive to a lot of people, or I don't know. There's a list of things that other people won't be interested in that. But what is more interesting is starting to look at more regional specific food systems. So instead of peanuts, instead of cornfields everywhere, instead of soybeans like we're growing them, actual like tree fruits, that kind of thing. Like what would grow around here that we can then harvest?
Yeah.
Let's start there. Let's dive into that.
It's a good question, and I think, again, that does take us back sort of into the same realm that annual vegetable gardening does, because just because it can grow here doesn't mean it naturally grows here.
Yep.
So we can distinguish the difference there if we need to, but there's a great handful of what we'd call woody perennials that grow in the area here. And a good number of them are native to the area. And so when we go to a site and assess what's going on, and then talk with the owner and try to determine what's the plan of attack here, natives are always kind of on the top of the list of what can we populate with here. For obvious reasons, they do well in the area with little inputs. Mm-hmm. And so so the list really contains a number of things that you've seen in your everyday walk through the grocery store. If you take a look at some of the ingredients, and you're seeing more and more of it. And so when I think about the natives, we've got a low bush blueberry that grows in the area that's native that a lot of people wouldn't know about, but a very common fruit that a lot of people do know about. Some of the berries that aren't as common, currant a little more common, but then you talk about its cousin, the gooseberry. Both of those are native. Both can grow in a semi-shaded environment.
Gooseberries
Yep.
look mean.
Yeah.
I went out we were out foraging for mushrooms, and I was with Kellen. And he's like, because we were in a spot, and I was like, we should go back here. I think we'll have a lot of luck. And we go back there, and he's like, holy shit, Bill, we're in like a field of gooseberries. I'm like, you mean these like really mean, like they have spikes?
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, you want to eat these? He's like, oh yeah, these are really. So we just spent like a half hour picking gooseberries.
Yeah.
Because I just would walk. I've walked through that field countless times. Like, these things all look mean. Why would I eat them? And here I am.
So their defense mechanism works against you.
Exactly. You're not wrong. But at the same time, isn't fruit sweet? So then you eat it and you like poop the seeds out in other spots. So why would it look mean then? What's going on there?
Yeah.
Explain to me the gooseberry.
I'm not sure the logic behind what the gooseberry thinks.
Yeah, we'll have to ask it and get back to you.
All right, I'm gonna ask.
There's got to be a resource out there, but
So we've got gooseberry. What was that? Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
All right. You just jump in at any time. This is very
casual.
Casual, yes.
Casual Bill.
So we've got gooseberries, we've got blueberries, and then you mentioned currants.
Currants, yep. We
found some of those this year on the Pab's bike extravaganza.
Yeah.
We were out and we're like, holy shit, currents. And then we forgot about the bike ride for a while. We were just picking.
Currents.
Well fueled.
Make note of where they were so you can go back
We
there.
did. I'm not divulging where they were.
Come on.
Nope, secret.
Can you drop a pin on that computer screen?
I will drop a pin on the computer screen for you. And then there were the farm shed plums, but I'll let people know about those. Those are amazing.
Yeah, plum's another one that grows native here. Of course, the varieties that you may see coming through the grocery store may not be those plums, and probably likely aren't. A lot of times you'll find that the fruit is smaller and it's maybe not as tasty. But again, it's easier to grow, and so something to keep in mind there as you discuss whether it's native or not when you're looking to this perennial food source.
I like it.
So yeah, plums are good. Once you get in, so some other berries that we think about, of course, raspberries, blackberries. So you look to the brambles. That's what I'd refer to those types of berries as. They grow on thorny canes, and so
Also mean.
Yep, also slightly mean. Not as mean as the gooseberry though.
Yeah. The fruit is nice.
Yeah.
The stem, the stalk,
Cane.
the cane. I like that. The cane. This is why I do this. I learn all the cool shit. This last deer season, I got into like 7-foot raspberry. Like I couldn't see. I was in the dark. My headlamp battery was dying. And I was like, oh, I'm going to cut through here to get, no.
When your headlamp's dying, that's where you want to be.
Yeah, 7-foot like my face is bleeding. I lost a glove, so this hand is like shredded. And
then a similar story with wood nettles. It's like above my head.
So tell it what are nettles, Miranda? Because there's people that maybe have heard the name, but what?
Like
why?
stinging nettles is I think the most common. So you were in what kind of nettles?
Wood nettles.
Wood nettles. Can you eat those as well?
Mm-hmm. They're not quite as tender.
Okay.
Unless you get them.
Are they as mean?
In the spring. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, their stingers are reflective of their size. They're larger.
Oh. Wood nettle. I'm looking at. Oh yeah, shit. Yeah, I've seen those before.
Yeah.
Those are mean.
Yeah, they're pretty mean.
And it lingers. The sting lingers.
I think this might have been what I got wrapped up into.
You can take dock leaf though.
Dock leaf. Is that like a boat
like
dock?
Yellow dock or burdock. Or
okay.
curly dock.
Burdock.
And it doesn't make it completely go away, but it takes like some of the stinger. It catches some of them. The
Good to know.
Texture of the leaf. And pulls them out.
Someone gave me lavender. I used that and it worked pretty well. Are you for or against the application of lavender?
Oh, I'm for it, but if you're out in the
field,
it's a lot more likely you're gonna find a dock leaf.
Not gonna have a bottle of lavender in my fanny pack.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
And if it's all over your body, then
yeah.
You know.
Oh god. I'm just thinking about the little patch I had in my shin, and how I was like, oh, that's kind of itchy, because I have like a semi-tolerance built up to poison ivy, but whatever this was.
Don't react to poison ivy.
Yeah, I'd have to get into a lot of it for a reaction to occur.
You should do a podcast on that once.
You
getting into a lot of
just me like interacting with all of these like mean plants in the studio. It's just like fresh vine. You just wipe it across my leg, see what happens.
Describe the sensation.
Yeah, the conversation in the background. I'm loving this. All right, so we've got two different narratives going right now. So
yeah, they're related though. I'm glad that we're doing this because we'll talk about that in just a bit.
Oh, okay.
But let's continue on because I think it's important to recognize that there is a gamut of things that can be planted. So when we talk about like your everyday intake of fruits, veggies, and nuts, we've talked about some of those, but some that we haven't addressed yet. Hazelnuts, another good one. And then there's some larger, those are in more shrub form, 8 to 10 feet tall, or 10 to 16, I guess depends on where they're growing. And that's a more common nut that you're used to, but hickory is another one that grows in our area, native. Chestnut, black walnut, there's another bitter nut. There's also a bladder nut, and so there's a handful of different types of nuts that do exist out there. grow native in our area, which can be added to your diet. And again, those are the types of plants that we would look to populate in an area when we have the opportunity. And so we got the nuts, we got some of the berries we mentioned. Aronia berry was another one. Cherry, there's a black cherry that's found. There's also a choke cherry. That's also, I'm trying to think of another name for that, but choke cherry is another one that's entirely edible. Just doesn't taste very good, and that hence the name choke cherry. It doesn't actually make you choke. Maybe it will.
Prunus virginiana.
Yeah, that's it.
Bitterberry, choke cherry. What else is it called? Those are the two big ones. Bitterberry and choke cherry.
And then another berry, I think my favorite, and I think Miranda would agree, is the elderberry. And that one you do hear a lot about as it relates to health and building up the immune system.
And there's actually a national shortage of them last year because they became so popular. So if people started growing their own...
So it became like a common superfood. I hate that word.
It became kind of a fad food, which is fascinating that happens. But.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so much a superfood, but it does. I mean, the properties that it exhibits as it relates to building your immune system are just astounding, and the results, I mean, just personally what I've recognized about it, and then you go out there and read about it, there's just so much benefit as it relates to building the strength of your immune system with it.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's got its own WebMD page. I'm guaranteeing if we look up burdock, that's not going to have a WebMD page.
Well, and I think that's something that's important to note, that as people do start to integrate these, like maybe more wild, or what are now wild foods into their lives, it's also really important to have people growing them, because otherwise we will eliminate
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're gonna. And Sambucus has a much better name than burdock, too, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, Sambucus. That's probably why it's so.
Sambucus.
And that it has its own page on.
Sambucus. So let's start diving into. How familiar are you on the history of the current food systems we have now?
Oh.
Do you want to dive into any of that?
Yeah, I mean, you can ask me questions.
So I want to know is all of these foods, like what both of you just rattled off and what I tried to take notes on, that stuff's everywhere. Yet so few people know that you can eat it.
Yeah, well, it's not. You can't drive your car, walk 10 feet, push a cart around for 5 minutes and get it.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
That's fair. So I guess from your standpoint, the two of you, what you do with soil, with educating people on perennial foods like this, where do you start? You've got all this. I mean, obviously you can't just throw this at someone, because I'm guessing it'd freak them out a little bit.
I would say you start wherever the person you're talking to is.
Okay.
Yeah. And so a lot of times we'll get requests from clients that are looking, well, and more so in the past, because now people have started to recognize what the services that we provide. But in the past, we'd get requests.
You don't just make garden beds?
Well, in the past, it was, can you come tend our perennial beds, our perennial flower beds?
Yeah.
And that's something that, although we could do it, what we were more geared towards was helping people to grow their food.
Yeah.
And so now that people recognize that, we get more requests in that fashion. So we're not necessarily warding people off because they don't want that, as we had in the past. And so when somebody comes to us, it's an easy conversation. It's like, yeah, we can help you grow food on your property. And then we take a look at the situation, assess what's the amount of sunlight there, do we have access to water, what's the amount of space that we have, and then what are your likes? What are you looking for here? And at that point, then we can determine, of course, the annual vegetable side, which we've talked about in the previous podcast, and building up raised beds and helping people to make that much easier is one side. But the perennial side, as we're talking about today, comes in different forms, and this is where the world of herbs and flowers comes together with woody perennials like we were talking about, and that is to create, the word that we use is a guild. And so we're GUILD, and so what we're doing is identifying a main constituent of a guild, whether it be a plum tree, an apple tree, blueberry bushes, aronia berry, whatever it might be, and then identifying the plants that you would either normally find around it or will provide good companions to that plant. And that's where these herbs and these flowers come into play, because now you're going to have a more healthy ecosystem there. From a number of standpoints, your soil, which is where it all starts, is going to be much healthier. And you're also going to find the organisms both in the soil and in the air on the plants themselves that are going to be beneficial to greater productivity of the plants that are there in a more healthy environment.
I like it. Brandon? Yes.
And
go.
you'll be drawing in beneficial pollinators with that, as well as, outcompeting other plant vegetation. As we said earlier, I'm not keen on the word weeds.
Yeah.
But if you are transforming your lawn into one of these things, lawn is very competitive.
Yeah.
As well as those plants have uses in your kitchen as well.
Yeah, I like it. So can I give both of you a couple scenarios and you bounce back, play around with? Maybe? Yeah. A little couple scenarios. I love actionable scenarios, or like role playing.
Sure.
All right, so let's start with the herbal side of things. And then real quick, have the two of you been to Liberation Farms, John and Holly's place?
Not in a couple years.
Like the perennials they have that have just kind of like taken over. Like that's lawn goals. That's what I want my whenever I have like completely settled down roots, I want that. And they've got like all just kinds of crazy stuff growing. Anyways, going to the herbs you're talking about are perennials, correct?
For the most part.
Like the chives I have in my backyard don't die ever.
Chives are hardy.
Yeah, they like 4 or 5 harvests a season easily. I'm sure if I went back there, dug out the snow, they'd still be growing.
The basil doesn't have the same fate as the chives.
basil we bring in. So if going off of like perennial herbs, we can dive into that in a second. I don't have this, but let's say I'm the person with like the perennial tulips, the perennial flowers, like the stuff I'm sure 3 years ago, 4 years ago, people were asking you like, hey, can you tend this? And you're like, shit. Yes, but I don't want to.
You mean like non-native perennial flowers?
Yes, non-native perennials and non-food perennials. So let's say I have that's existing, but now I want to make this transition. What would you have them start with?
I think I would identify what they want to get out of it first, because if they're not feeling some sort of either like intrinsic reward or like satisfaction in with what they're harvesting, or and maybe they don't want to harvest, maybe they just want a native pollinator habitat.
Okay.
So if their box isn't being checked, they're not going to care about it, and they're not going to maintain it. So that's kind of what I meant by like you start where the person is at.
No, that's I love it, because that's exactly how, even with what I do, we start with. So let's start with, I hope I can get clear enough. Let's go with that last one you covered. So the person that just wants to see something cool grow, they want a native perennial for pollinators. What are a couple examples that you have
of plants?
Yeah.
I I mean, I don't usually recommend planting any like one or two things because of that biodiversity we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And so we tend to do for pollinator habitat more seed mixes.
Okay.
And then also because those things can take a really long time to get established, incorporating what would be like plant plugs. And so like we would start plants of those same thing, like Anis hissa, Rudbeckia.
Echinacea would be another common, popular one. Bergamot, which is bee balm, and it is used in landscaping today. It's usually not the native variety.
Okay.
But that's another one that you see a lot in established landscapes.
I like it. I like the approach you have to that a lot, Miranda. Like the way you're looking at what specifically that person needs. And I'm doing a terrible job of asking for examples, and I understand that. So
I do want to note really quick with the bee balm, I recently learned there was a recent study that came out that it is important, like, you know, there's a lot of these cultivar varieties that are the same plant as native. So like bee balm natively is a different color than like what is used in landscaping, and they have recently discovered that pollinators they see a difference in the colors and they won't be attracted to those plants.
That's so crazy.
So they're not doing the same thing as the natives.
That's awesome.
Which blew my mind.
Yeah.
But
I mean, because that's super common for insects to see in like different spectrums of light, right? Like they see, like birds and insects see like completely different things than we do. I mean, it makes sense when someone says it. They're like, "Hey, this is what we saw." You're like, "Oh yeah, it makes sense." What is it? Bee balm exactly?
Monarda fistulosa.
I'm looking at
Look at that one. Oh, did you?
Yeah, I got it. I've got it up.
What is it exactly? It's a flowering perennial, and I don't know that
thing looks crazy.
Yeah, right.
Whoa.
It's cool. It's a cool plant. You'll notice on the side of Casimir Road as you drive down there sometimes.
So the last year and a half ish, I've gotten a couple foraging books, a couple perennial books.
you can't go anywhere the same.
Oh no, it's awesome. I love it. It's like going outside, like the equivalent of when I go out on the river and I'm like my trapping brain kicks in. Now it's the same thing everywhere else with like foraging. And then I'm like, oh, I could eat that. And then I look around, I'm like, but I don't want to because of what it's exposed to environmentally.
Yeah, right.
I was gonna say that.
And that bee balm or bergamot is maybe the name that you would see if you were to see it in a consumable. And that's typically just a scent or an essential oil, and that promotes relaxation. Do you know the answer to that?
I don't work that much with essential oils, so I don't want to say.
Let's go down to
definitively.
Wait, no. Okay.
And so it's not something that you'd necessarily find as a consumable out there, but it is acting in unison with the rest of these plants to provide a diverse environment that you'll see the beneficial insects in and the other beneficial organisms, fungus and bacteria, and creating an environment that's going to lend itself to greater productivity of the food that we are going after.
I like it. Cooking. So if we are cooking herbals, like a growing part of what you're doing now in the perennial food space, what does that look like? What are some
culinary uses?
What are some culinary herbs that are native or that grow well?
Oh, geez, Louise.
What do we got going on?
That are also medicinal?
Yeah. Or not. No, I love food.
I don't think oregano is native, but that's the first one that comes to mind.
The culinary ones aren't native.
Yeah.
Where do they come from?
Mostly the Mediterranean is where they're native to. Like a lot of what we grow here.
That makes sense.
Don't think about moving there, though, Bill. We need you
definitely
here.
Definitely not.
Okay. There's some travel bans on Italy right now.
Oh, there you go.
Go see the Pope
there you go.
when you get a chance. and then get some
Bring him some oregano.
culinary herbs.
Culinary herbs.
So oregano is one of those that you'll find both in heavy use, both in the kitchen and also in your medicine cabinet for those that do use herbs medicinally. And that's recognized as a main constituent of an oil that I came across a long time ago that was called thieves oil.
Oh,
and,
yeah, I've got that.
You do?
Yeah.
All right. So then the idea there is it's antimicrobial, antiviral, antibacterial, and it was used when the thieves, I think it was during the plague.
Yep.
And so the thieves during the plague would put this on them, on their handkerchiefs or on their mouths, and when they went to rob the
grave rob.
Essentially
Thievery.
perform their thievery on people
All of
with
the thievery
that succumbed to the plague.
That's right. I forgot
so
about that.
not that we would suggest using it in that manner. We don't have a little placard by it in
It's
the
a
garden
great
that
story,
says-
though. I love it.
But oregano is one of those, and then I
Thyme is another one with very similar properties to oregano, as well as being supportive to the immune system, in addition to antiviral, antibacterial.
I like it.
And sage is another very popular one, and that, especially for women and like hormonal and reproductive health, going through my brain, trying to.
Yeah, piece it all together.
picking herbs in your brain.
It's, I don't want to interrupt you, so keep thinking, but I love the idea that we're, as a society, as a culture, we're getting back to actually understanding the world around us, not thinking we can control everything, and that it's reduced down to like corn, soybean, and wheat. Like there's all of these other food crops that, or I shouldn't say food crops, but just all of these other plants that exist that can sustain us. I love the idea of that, and that we're rediscovering the knowledge because we did a pretty shitty job of that a long time ago.
I like that you're highlighting it. I also think it's necessary to point out, when you said the word sustain, it makes me think about like, what are we going to do so we can get by? But if we were to really look at this, and assign value to this, it's not just getting by. It's actually potentially putting ourselves into a better spot. Even.
Yeah, definitely.
And so we're not spending as much on things, certainly not on things that don't work, or certainly not on things that make you think they're working but make you reliant upon them.
Yeah.
And so more and more spending. So we're minimizing cost from a monetary standpoint, maybe replacing that cost with a little time and effort. But again, we're getting value out of that. And that was one of the first things when I first met you, Bill, that you were found value in gardening is the activity behind it.
Definitely.
And so there's that going on as well, and bringing quality to life. And with some of our clients who are a little bit older, like when we build up a raised garden bed, back to annual vegetable gardening, now they're doing activity again, whereas they hadn't had an opportunity to do that in the past. And so that active lifestyle is also another benefit that's built into that too.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's like a huge part of what drives me in this is, for me, a lot of this is like, if done with intention, we're creating a system and encouraging and inspiring people themselves to symbiotically thrive with nature. I think we've spent a lot of time thinking that we were separate, and that is both detrimental to us and to our natural habitat.
Definitely.
We're all related.
We are.
We're all in it together.
All in it together. I'm going to go back to my terrible examples and role playing.
Thanks for the warning.
Yeah, because I'm just doing a piss because I realized
I'm gonna take another sip of this wild basin.
you probably should open another one. Because in my I've got such a newbie raw view of your systems and what all goes into it. So I realize more and more the intention and the thought and the systems you have in place and how my brain is I'm still down here.
No, you're over there.
I'm just figuring it out. But so I hate red pine trees. I hate them. This is just me off on a tangent. I hate them when I go out on public land and they're there. I hate them where I live. They bug me.
Why?
I don't know.
You think about it and
let
me know sometime.
The fact that it the soil I live on because of them is just there's nothing there.
Or are they because of the soil?
Well, it could be that. Well, I guess it's the rows. It's the way they're planted.
That's not their fault.
Mechanically.
Well, that's what I guess. Yeah, I'm not blaming the red pines individually, specifically as a species.
Okay.
I'm hating the idea that we created behind them and the way they're planted.
Gotcha.
That's what I hate.
You're somewhat of a utilitarian too, and you see them making a mess. You see them acidifying soil that you want to grow vegetables in.
Yeah.
And you see a plant that isn't as much use to you.
Yeah. Or when I go somewhere and I'll be on public land out in the woods, and there even then, because it's hard to know what would be native historically before the cutover and what is native now because of the amount of logging that's been done and what kind of propagates. But you'll go through it and all of a sudden you'll get to these rows of red pines and I'm just God, that's
we're on the southern border of the boreal forest region in North America.
Yep.
And so, natively speaking, you would likely have found them. I don't know enough about it. But you'd likely have found them in this area.
Oh, definitely. Just not in lines.
And
as far as you can see.
Not in lines. I think we talked to. Is it the?
That's what drives me crazy. It's not the red pine themselves. It's the lines.
You know that red pine is one of the major fuel sources that we use for cooking down maple syrup, and it is maple syrup season.
It is maple syrup season,
and I know you to like maple syrup.
I love me some maple syrup.
So,
do you like maple syrup because the red pines are being cut?
Probably. There's probably an aspect knowing that more red pines get cut down that I'm totally okay with. I had to let that out. The red pine thing just bugs me. Okay, I feel better. It's out. The red pine, it's out. Just bug me.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it's the same reason that being in cities bugs me. It's just too many, even poorly designed ones where there's not a lot of straight lines.
It does provide shade, which is nice.
Yeah. Is there
sound and temperature insulation?
Is there anything that can coexist with red pines that I can eat?
Yeah. I think you'd find blueberries would do well.
Okay. All right. Good.
In their proximity.
This is my own personal use. What do I need to plant? Let's make that the example.
You also.
I've got hops. Hops do decent.
The pine nut.
Off of the pine, off of a red pine.
Yeah. In theory.
You probably could.
They're too high up. The squirrels.
Sounds like an issue for you.
Yeah. Well, the squirrels eat them, and I eat the squirrels.
Oh,
so you're eating them.
So I'm eating them.
I'm glad you
just
said
gave
that.
An example.
We didn't arrive at that conclusion.
Yeah.
You did.
Well, I mean, I'm good on the animal part. I know what the animals are eating, and I eat the animals. But I'm just curious.
I truly think it's just
space more.
Yes.
I truly think it's because they're in rows.
They are. It bugs me. I'm gonna be honest right now.
You could have your neighbor Stan. He's got just about a huge chainsaw.
Did he?
Yeah.
Of course he did.
Have
to
him
go with that huge bucket lift. All right, we got to get off the red pines. That's eating up too much time.
Let's talk about white pines instead.
I like white pines. White pines are good. Jack pines, white pines. I don't have a problem with them.
Scotch pine?
Scotch pine. I don't even have a problem with Scotch pine.
I'm looking at planting some Korean pine, which is another one. It's not native, but it does well in our area here.
Okay.
Actually, even in colder areas. that create the pine nut. Now that is a food source that you'll see on the grocery shelf.
I'll eat the shit out of some pine nuts. Yeah.
Super tasty. So that's something that could be done in our area here. And you're looking at, similar to, related to the red pine.
Yeah.
And so it needs that sandy, well-drained area. It's going to leave, it's an acidic environment that is being either created or had been created, or that it found its home in, or that we gave it.
What's the turnaround on a Korean pine? So like
7 years is the minimum that you're going to see before you.
Okay.
And so going back to your question earlier, when we run into a client or talk with a client who's asking, how's my hair look today?
It looks outstanding.
That's not.
It's like my dad's hair.
They're asking, what is it that we plant here? How long are you going to be there?
Yeah.
And so important, right?
Yeah.
And so the turnaround on that one's 7 years. Whereas if you're in the right environment on some of these berry bushes, shrubs, brambles, canes, what have you, you may see 2 to 3 years out. And on some of the dwarf fruit trees as well, something as early as 3 to 4 years, you'll see production on those too. So,
I like it. The raspberries out by us when we first moved in, they were like adamant about crushing every year, and we're like, no, just let them grow, like, and it's been 6 years now. It's awesome. Like, not like enough where you could like bake off of them, but there's enough where every day we can go out and get a handful, handfuls, eat them, snack on them. And it's
a semi-shaded environment, so it's not perfect for it, but again, your red pines are providing an ecosystem that's beneficial for those damn raspberries to grow. So chalk one up for love the red pines.
I like it. This is more of a existential, I guess, or like a long-term question. Is there a way for us to integrate these large scale? Yeah, just start plugging that in. Large scale or long-term, where we can start feeding more people. Because going back to the very beginning, I love how you talked about low-income food, because that is a huge part of the conversation, and a huge going over. I'm all over the place, but that's okay. We're doing the CSA drive at the gym for this year, and it's like the full share is like just over $20, or right around $20 to $25 a week, which is like super, super low compared to like average family is spending way more than that per week on groceries.
Yeah, but you need it all up front.
Not completely. Some of them are. So some of them do installments. Some of them you can do pre-written checks. And yes, for some people, all up front, it's definitely like too much of an ask for sure going in. But what I found super fascinating when I was doing research and looking into it and trying to break down the numbers for people was that a large chunk of people who are actually buying into local food are below the average or the median household income for an area. Like, you are looking at low middle class to lower class, if you want to use those definitions, for people that buy into local food, that like give a fuck about sustainable food systems, which I found super fascinating, because I'll admit the people I'm servicing in my industry, in like the gym setting, are definitely middle to upper middle class. So having that, it's creating that value around local food systems.
Yeah, is it the food or the community aspect? What do you think it is?
That's what
I think it's both. As someone who like came from that background, I don't know that I would have stayed working as hard for as little money as farmers make without the community. Mm-hmm. But also knowing what, or learning what it felt like to like, have the intrinsic reward, eat healthy food, have that change in your body, and all of those things that come with that.
Yeah.
So there's camaraderie on top of it. I know, like with White Feather Organics, the vegetable farm east of town here that you alluded to earlier, and friends of ours, Tony and Laura out there, their members look forward to more than just receiving a box. they also are invited to events out there where they can meet with other members, meet new people, like-minded, or maybe not like-minded, and learn some new things, new facets of lifestyles that they hadn't in the past, or to go out and pick the vegetables themselves. And so, yeah, maybe it is that that a lifestyle is created here through doing that. That's more of a reward than anything else to these individuals, and they see greater value beyond just the dollar sign on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of that going on with that.
Yeah.
And I know as Miranda and I were putting together a presentation that we'll be doing in a couple of weeks here, where we talked about community as well in growing fruits, nuts, vegetables on your own property. In that, now all of a sudden you're interacting with neighbors that you hadn't before because you grew too much zucchini, and you hand some off to the neighbor, or they see your apple tree producing, and they got grandma's apple pie recipe they want to tell you about, and now next thing you know, you've got new friends, and you've built your community and your neighborhood up by doing these things, which is another exciting part of what we do.
Oh, definitely. I love the idea of, like you talked about, the community, the extras just behind the food, because that's kind of what I'm trying to work out too, as I'm trying to connect this world of health and fitness with the local food system, because exactly what you're talking about is what gets talked about all the time in any gym I've ever gone to, is the community, learning new things from people, hanging out outside of just that point, or like the health benefits, and everyone in the gym is talking about food or eating, what they put in their bodies, right? It's like, well, here are these awesome local systems we have available to us. Support those. Like, go to and where we're located, the Winter Farmers Market is right down the road, so it's been awesome to see people every Saturday after the gym go there, get breakfast, even if it's just getting coffee or like snacks from like Liberation Farmers, or
Primitive Pastures.
Yeah, Primitive Pastures for breakfast. Yeah. And this year they've been kind of doing the rotation of who makes breakfast.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool. So it's been awesome to see that. And I want to just keep it growing and have these conversations so I can better connect the two dots and hopefully relay that message. Like, getting more of this, Miranda's just blown up over there. Getting more of the upper middle class buying into these local food systems, I think is going to be super important in the future.
I wonder if there's, go ahead.
I think it's great that you're breaking down that dollar amount as well for people to see, like, hey, look, and within that, that I'm assuming at least that you're breaking it down within the amount of weeks that are in a CSA box, but like, I'm still eating vegetables that I put out. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I think I'm down to the last couple packages. It's what's nice about when the old kitchen coordinator for Farm Shed's your neighbor.
Thanks, Greg.
Pick his brain on doing all the things. Yeah. It's like food Google. This is like a big, up in the clouds question. If two of you could have like unlimited access to resources and time, how could we go about creating like a food system, like instead of just like random landscaping done through in town or wherever, what would it look like to have community gardens like there are for the annuals in Point, but what would like a perennial food forest,
that idea.
Perennial food forest
we were talking.
Or garden look like in Stevens Point?
I wanted to comment first because I think there's a precursor to that ought to be recognized, and that is knowledge and what does this do for me? And getting that out there first and foremost before you even put a fork into the ground is, to me, paramount. One of the concepts that I've always thought about ever since I got into food and growing food, that I've talked with Miranda about, I've talked with Tony out at White Feather Organics, maybe we talked about it previously too, is recognizing the real value of food that's grown both organically and locally. And that is, to take that a step further, is the nutritional content of the food. And if you were to take a cucumber off the shelf of the grocery store that had been sitting there for a week and had been on a truck for a week before that and was picked underripe in a greenhouse in Mexico, and compared the nutritional content of that to one that was grown in Lonely Oak Farms garden the day before. And so if we were able to take a look at these foods and say, first measure the quality of the food in an instant.
Yep.
And so a device that could do that would be a game changer, because the individual who we're talking about getting on board with this would now have in the power of their hand something that would show them on the spot why it makes sense to buy something like this or to partake in something like this, including what you're talking about as a community orchard or a community garden, not just annual gardening.
Yep.
And so that knowledge and then the buy-in along with that. And so how do we extrapolate the higher nutrient content to a healthier life, less healthcare costs, and greater quality of life as a whole? And so getting that out there, to me, would be the precursor to actually getting involved in putting a shovel in the ground.
Definitely. So not only like I'm picturing the Pokemon Go gadget, right? That like helps you, that not only gives you the herb nerd nutrient breakdown, but also can tell you about the tree. Like you scan it, Google Lens type shit, where it tells you what it is, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm just picturing like that people can go there, learn about it, and also feed themselves.
That's awesome, because you could also scan palm oil and it could show you how it's disrupting society.
Exactly. It shows you the other way.
Or avocados that are sucking the water, like the Missouri or the Colorado River dry because of their overwatering and things like that. You could see both sides of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could see that.
All right, so we've got the information out there. Everyone's understanding the benefits of not only from the nutrient side of things, but also the more immediate, like, environmental concerns.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Then where do we go? Where do we go in this hypothetical?
We need space. Where's the space?
Okay, I can find you space.
Yeah.
There's a lot of areas in town where we can just start carving up or planning, or what do we need to do?
Cool. So you space, and then how do we have to alter that space to make it conducive? And ideally, we don't want to have to do a whole lot of that, so finding the right space would make sense.
Yeah.
And then what are our resources? Not, certainly there's going to be some money necessary, but I think more importantly, as we look to charge the soil, and in any environment where you're growing food, you've got to replenish the soil. And so how are we doing that? What's our resource stream for compost? The beauty of what we do is that a lot of that can be created right on the spot with the byproducts or the the products that don't go onto the table.
It's essentially like regenerative agriculture, but on a smaller scale.
Yeah, and that's the thing. In what is it, like 40% of food gets thrown out, or some crazy number like that. Like I worked in a grocery store for 5 years in high school, high school, early years of college. There's a lot of food waste at the grocery store level.
Yeah.
At every level. Really.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was going to say, and then you compound that at the where the grocery store gets their food from, the large scale farms, the factories where dump trucks full of ugly produce gets thrown out or never sees the shelf because it doesn't meet the cartoon picture of what a carrot looks like.
Right.
And then in the household level, restaurants, blah 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 blah. It's at every level. So it's cool to see the compost system that's here in town, like where they're picking it up and bringing it back to local soil and not sending it out to the landfill where
Closed loop.
the bears are eating it and the crows, and that's about it.
But then you eat the bears and the crows.
I do.
so
I do.
That's a closed loop too.
I
Have you
am-
ever eaten crow?
I have not. I've gone hunting for them a few times without luck. They're actually very smart birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go off on a really quick little tangent.
Do it.
My
You have a
grandfather
crow.
shoots squirrels from his porch.
Okay.
And he once shot a crow,
Okay.
and then he had like 30 crows that day circling where the crow fell and died. And then the next day he said like probably like between 50 and 70 crows just like circling.
Wow.
Yeah. So they had a funeral of sorts or something.
That's
for
intense.
The crow. But yeah.
It's,
so he's
it's
said he'd
considered
never
a
shoot
murder
crow.
of crows.
Yeah, I was
Correct.
gonna say a large group of crows is a murder,
Mm-hmm.
which is why it's an interesting animal for sure.
Do you know why you never see them dead on the road? Because they've got a buddy sitting on a fence post going caw caw.
I'm so happy you went there. Dad joke. Dad joke for everyone listening.
So how are we going to create this community supported
Yes.
or this community orchard?
Where we can trap squirrels, because there's going to be lots of them.
A community perennial space.
So what's the best way to utilize your space? Layering.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what does the community want from the space? Also making it usable so you can actually get in there and harvest, so not overcrowding and having airflow.
I think commitment then. Who's going to continue to do this? Because as we talked about, these things aren't immediate. It's not like an annual vegetable garden that you're going to get results that year.
Yeah.
So do we have commitment there? You know, maybe the funds can come in, but is there going to be somebody there to maintain? And, you know, maintenance programs are easy enough to come by or to come up with for the area. You know, both implementation and ongoing maintenance. You know, that's easy enough to come up with, but who's going to be there to do
Commitment.
it? And then, you know, because you don't want to put a lot in 2-3 years just to find out on year 5 when this thing's going to be producing.
Start taking off. No one's there.
That nobody's there. So, and I suspect that there's plenty of community members who know that they're going to be here long term, but that might be the challenge there.
Oh, completely, for sure. Have you, and you don't have to answer this,
Okay.
your like longest client or person maybe you've kind of exchanged, the person you've maybe first mentored in this, because that's really what I think of you as like both of you,
Maybe?
is like a soil a soil mentor. What, like, I'm sure because your land ethic has changed in the years you've been doing this, the two of you. What kind of like changes do you see in your clients, in your apprentice throughout this transition? Because I gotta imagine it's gotta be like crazy. Just in the few years I've been like following you and trying to learn more about soil.
It's so soil, right?
Or systems, or
I think the biggest thing that I've recognized is the life in the soil and how it is where everything begins. And so there's so much in soil that we don't see, and Western society tends to be working against
just poison
their
it.
use of
Just
chemicals,
kill everything.
exactly, and farming techniques too. Let's face it. You know, I mean, thank you to the farmers for everything that farmers have done, but conventional farming, there's a button there. Conventional farming is a toxic practice in more than just, you know, the chemicals that they use. It's in the methods that are used. It's providing for us, right? I mean, what is it? Some large percentage of food on the grocery store shelves have corn in them or soy. Our gasoline has corn in it. Never mind the moisture byproduct that's ruining our engines or whatnot. And so, like, the buyer supports it. Our communities, our society is built upon it. I was getting on a soapbox I want to get off of here.
Coming back to the soil.
So, yes.
Your clients and your apprentices.
Yeah, okay, so recognizing the life in soil. And so how do we foster an environment where we have soil working, where we're working with soil and soil's working with us? And that's probably sort of what I've learned through the years of doing this, is the importance of seeing that and seeing it, not just did it produce a plant for me this year that produced fruit or vegetable for me, but is it alive? Is it doing well? And is it going to do the same thing, if not better, next year? And did I do it? Are we doing it without any expense to anything or anyone around us? And so recognizing the amount of fungus, 300 to 400 different types of fungus in a handful of soil, billions of bacteria in a handful of soil.
Healthy
soil.
Bacteria.
So in the hunting space, there's this idea called healthy forests. And for the most part, it's about certain hunting organizations who want to see the numbers of their specific game animal increase, because in the time of our grandfathers, those numbers were high, but that was also like 20 years post cut over. So yeah, you had a lot of young forest, which sucks at healthy soil. Like a lot of young forest does not make healthy soil. And so now they're looking at, like, why are all the insects like dying in the forest? Like nothing can survive in the forest, and they're looking at the level of fungus in the soil and how it's like non-existent in a lot of these younger forests. So as soon as you said that, it like triggered that whole conversation, because I try to bring that then into the hunting space, and people are like, what are you talking about? All we care is about the game species. I'm like, hey, I love hunting as much as the next person. I do. But if we're going to actually throw around words like conservationists and healthy forests, then we need to actually be looking at the soil, biodiversity, at the whole system, not just the 40. And this is like a 40-year time span. A lot of these people are looking at, like, we have to look beyond that.
Yeah,
40 or 60 years. It's bigger than that.
Our children.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who's a parent, that before they make any choice about anything, you would think that's what they think about.
Yeah.
Like, what is my child going to be experiencing? And even people without children. Yeah. Thank you to those who don't have children, and say, what are the future generations going to be dealing with here?
Yeah.
And so, it is all interrelated. I wanted to point out a book that I think your followers would enjoy if they enjoy this podcast, or this edition of the podcast. The Hidden Life of Trees. The name's Peter Woolabin. He's the author.
Did I read this?
There's also a Radiolab episode with him.
Ooh,
is this
nice?
I think it's called, like,
podcast listeners don't read books, do they?
Oh, sometimes.
I
What?
love podcasts and books.
I'm just kidding.
I think I did read this book.
It got a lot of attention a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I want to add to that sentiment that a huge part of it also, and you had once said, we're ideally will eventually put ourselves out of business because people will be doing this themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, and I don't want to speak for you, but I assume also for you, Jason, a huge part of this is each year working with a client, needing to help them with less, because we don't want to do this for them. We want to empower them to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And so we, have had clients where maybe the first year they're having us do implement a vegetable garden for them, and they need help with a lot of it. And then the following year they're doing the vegetables, and now they want to add a fruit tree guild of sorts, or and so seeing them grow their knowledge and their properties to be more self-sufficient, and talking about that in their communities, and bringing it into other communities that maybe aren't having as fluid of conversations like you yourself, bringing that into the hunting conversation, which thank you for doing that. We need this conversation to spread beyond just the people who are actively seeking it.
Yeah.
Because it is all interrelated.
Love it.
One other resource for soil, if anybody wants
Soil nerd.
Herb nerd on soil. Soil nerd. Mycorrhizal Planet. So Mycorrhizal Planet. Michael Phillips. He's in my mind, at least in my experience, he's the leading organic orchardist expert out there.
And his wife is an herbalist.
And his wife happens to be an
How
herbalist.
do I spell Mycorrhizal?
Mycorr.
C-O.
Mycorrhizal.
Mycorrhizal. There we go.
And he does an incredible job of putting in layman's terms the science behind soil and the interconnectivity of the organisms in the soil and the plants, and then therefore we humans. And so, I think recognizing the need for that healthy environment that in soil. And so how do we continue to replenish what we've taken out of it, and how do we do it in a way that's, the least amount of inputs possible?
I love it. I have so many show notes for this episode. I love it. Thank you both for coming on. We're over an hour, so let's just
go 2 right away.
Yeah, let's just go for 2. You both had pretty great freaking concluding points, but anything you want to kind of, how people can reach out to you if they want to learn more, if they want to get something like this going at their place, I don't know. What do you want to end with?
We get a lot of we're seeing a lot more come through the Facebook Messenger. Again, our Facebook page itself is not real strong right now. We're going to build on that, Bill, I promise. And we're doing it not just for you.
Love you.
And so you can reach out on Facebook to Garden Guru. I think it's Stevens Point Garden Guru, or
I'll put a show note.
The Garden Guru.
There'll be a show note.
And then phone number comes to my cell phone, and I wish it would go to Miranda's, but we put that out there on our marketing materials, 715-252-9146. Otherwise, Garden Guru Stevens Point at gmail.com, or Miranda is not available by email.
I thought you were going to say Miranda Garden Guru, but it's Garden Guru Miranda.
There we go. Garden Guru Miranda at gmail.com. And we're, right? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
And so we're both happy to, field any requests there. But at the end of the day, it's important to us, and we're happy to educate, but it's important to us that the requests that we get are of a nature where we are looking to do what you talked about, Bill, what your aim is there. And that's it, at the end of the day, building a stronger community. And at the beginning of the day, that's building a stronger us. And we are here to help people to do that through growing their foods and some of their medicines, as it turns out, with Miranda's help.
Hell yes. Miranda, what do you have to end with? What do you feel?
When does this come out?
This podcast.
3 weeks from now? 4 weeks?
Don't pressure Bill.
3 or 4
Well,
weeks.
I was gonna.
I had to think.
Say if you have kids who you want to introduce to gardening.
Oh, that's right. I'll make sure I plug that separate. But yes.
Just in case, but it's on March 12th. So
Yeah.
Well, I'll
that's
plug that through my
week,
social media
Thursday.
trail.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
And that's at Family Natural Foods in Wisconsin Rapids.
Yeah, next Thursday. That's awesome.
The ABCs of gardening.
Yeah.
Gardening presentation, 45 minutes, presented in a kid-friendly manner. Thank you, Miranda, for pointing
That's
that
right. I forgot about that. I saw that. I plugged it once at the gym. I'll plug it again the rest of this week.
Thank you.
Definitely. You're welcome. Thank you both for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for doing what you're doing, man.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Big fans of what you're doing. I love it. And that's how my garden gets better every year.
Yeah.
Just pick your brain a little. You give me one actionable step. I'm like, all right, let's go for it.
Okay.
So with that, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks
you're
for
welcome.
having me.